Hi, I'm Haley from WeMadeItHome.com, and this is the second video in a series about how to make a sewing pattern from your favorite t-shirt. In the previous video, we learned how to make this sewing pattern that you'll see in the middle of the table, and for today's tutorial you'll need that pattern, an iron, a yard of fabric, a pair of fabric shears or scissors, and a simple sewing machine with matching thread. So let's get started. So one other thing that I forgot to mention is that you're going to need some straight pins. So what I've done so far is I've taken our yard of fabric and folded it in half. I've laid out the front part of our pattern and I've put straight pins in each of the corners to hold it in place. And so what we're going to do now is just start to cut out the fabric. I'm going to start here at the neckline. Just follow your pattern. And then one thing that you probably noticed when we were making our pattern is that we didn't leave any seam allowances. So basically what we need to do is add a little bit of like a 1/4 inch along our pattern so that we have enough room to sew along this line with a little bit of fabric left over. So what I'm just going to do is, the neckline is going to be different so we don't have to leave any allowance there, but I am going to leave a 1/4 inch at the top. So I'm just going to go a 1/4 inch above this line, and it's just a straight line, so I mean you can just eyeball it, no big deal. And I'm also going to, for this opening on our arm, I'm going to leave an extra inch because we're going to fold it over twice to finish the sleeve. So you'll see 1/4 inch at the top and 1 inch, it's about an inch for the sleeve. I'm actually going to come to the bottom because I'm going to have to walk around. And I'm going to leave an inch at the bottom as well because we're going to roll that over twice to finish it. So again, just, doesn't have to be perfect. And then we're going to leave another 1/4 inch along this seam right here. So I'm just going to keep cutting. All right. Underarm. We're just gonna go right there, finish it up. All right, now I'm gonna take these pins out, and a lot of times, since we guessed at how the curve of this neckline, I don't always get them right. So we're gonna take out these pins, we're gonna take off our pattern, and we're gonna open up the front of our shirt. We're just gonna see how it looks. And you know what? I kind of like that. I think it's a nice neckline, but sometimes you'll get like a point at the bottom, and what you can do is just fold it back over again. And if you get like a point at the bottom, just make sure that you can go back in here and you can cut straight across so that this opening is straight and it doesn't come to a point. And if you want it bigger, you can come out further and cut it along here. Just make sure that you end up in the same point, because remember, we want these points to match up on the front and back. All right, so I'm going to relay out my fabric and we're going to cut out the back now. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing with the back. I'm going to grab my scissors and we're going to go right along this neckline. We're going to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance along the shoulder. We're going to leave an inch for the sleeve. we're going to leave an inch at the bottom. And finish up this last side. There we go. All right, so now we just have the pocket and the collars left to cut out. Now I have our fabric folded in half again, and these are the pattern pieces that we cut out earlier for our pocket. And then these two pieces are going to help us finish our neckline. So I've pinned them in place on the fold and tried to, you know, waste as little fabric as possible. And I'm just gonna cut out around these. Just right along, we don't need to leave any allowance for these. So there's one. Here's our pocket. And then the neckline. And I'm actually going to cut out one more pocket. So I'm going to take out these pins. I'm going to reposition the pocket. I might not need it, but sometimes it's hard to make these circles perfect. So we might need another piece of fabric to finish off these edges. So I'm just going to cut out one more of those. Like so. Easy enough. Alright, so now we're going to get started on the neckline. What I have here is the front portion of our pattern that we've already cut out. And I also have the neckline that we cut out. So I'm going to finish taking out the pins from this paper. And one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to finish this neckline. So basically you take this piece of fabric that's cut to go right along here, and you want to use the back side out to the front. So you're just going to take it like that, line it up. I'm going to pin these in place. And this is just a really simple way to finish a neckline. And I'll show you in just one second after I'm pinning this, how this is all going to work out. So all of this is almost, it's pinned into place. And what we're going to do is we're just going to sew right along this line right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flip it inside and iron it down so that this will be a totally finished seam. Alright, so I think I'm going to do the same technique that we're doing on our neckline on our pocket, just so that we can get those rounded corners. So I'm going to take the pocket, I'm going to set it here, and remember we cut out two, and I'm just going to hollow out the middle of this. So just cutting around, maybe leaving a 1/2 inch, just so that it's not too thick. Just eyeball a 1/2 inch. And I'm going to, I know this is hard to see, we're going to fold this up. And we're just going to use the same technique. We're going to put that on here. We are going to pin it in place. Actually, first we're just going to sew around these edges the same way that we're going to do up here. Now I'm just going to do the same thing with the top. I'm going to pull this down so it's easier for you to see. This is the back of our pattern. This is the neckline that we cut out. And I'm just going to do the same thing. Open it up, line it up with the back. I'm just going to pin it in place. So there's the back, here's the front, and here's our pocket. And I'm going to go to my sewing machine now. There's no special trick with it, and I'm just going to just sew right along the top of this, and right along this neckline, and right on the edges of this pocket. So I'm going to go and do that, and I'll be right back. So I've sewn the collar of our t-shirt just right along the edge, and then I pressed it down. And I'm going to turn this over so that you can see the back. So you can see we just sewed that right along here, flipped it over and pressed it. And to finish this, what we're going to do is just roll it over again, like this. Just keep rolling it under so that you don't have a raw edge, so that the raw edge is up against the seam. And you're going to keep doing that all the way around. And then we're going to iron it, and we're going to sew it down. We're going to do the same thing with the front and the back. And now I have our little pocket here. This is what it looks like all sewn down. And we're going to take the top and flip it over, and we're going to iron this down as well. And then just do one straight stitch straight across the top. We're going to find a good place to put it on the front. It's good if you look at another shirt that you have just for kind of reference of where the pocket should be. And then once this straight stitches is made, you can pin this down, and then you're just going to pin and sew along these three sides so that the neckline and your pocket will be on. And we're also going to do the same thing with the back of this one. So this is our back, and we're going to do the same thing where you take the unfinished edge, roll it under, we're going to pin it. I'm just going to pin the whole thing right now because it won't take long at all. And we're going to iron it, and we're going to sew it, and then we'll be done with those seams. So I'm going to go, and I'm just going to sew those right now. Alright, so I'm back with the shirt, and basically what I did was fold over the top of the pocket, iron it down. We sewed this seam across the top, pinned it in place, and then sewed around these 3 corners. And it's a little bit wonky, but I think it's going to be fine. And then for our neckline, we folded over the top part, and I'll just show you that we folded it over, pinned it in place, ironed it down, and then sewed right along this edge. And we did the same thing with the back. Folded it, pinned it, ironed it, and sewed across the seam. So now what we have to do is we're going to start with the back, and we're going to put it's going to be inside out. So you want the pretty side facing you. Then we're going to take the front and inside out. Imagine your shirt's inside out. So the back side is facing you. And we're going to match up all of these points on our sleeve and along our neckline. And we're going to be ready to do some more sewing in just a second. So we have to line these up. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew across the top and down under the armpit and down to the bottom seam. But first what we have to do is we have to pin these in place. So you just have to match everything up. Let's start with this one. Let's see. Pin it. I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to match these sleeves up. This curve. And we want them to meet down at the bottom. I'm going to pull this over so you can see better. We're just going to pin this in place. You can see it's starting to really look like a shirt. Get this one. I'm going to pull it over and I'm going to walk to the other side. Alright, we're going to match these up again. I'm going to do the same thing along the bottom. And remember, we kind of guessed with this part of the sleeve when we added that for the hem, so it's okay if it's not 100% perfect. But this part should match up. Alright, now those are all pinned. So again, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew just a straight stitch right across this top, and then down around the armpit and down to the hem, and the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to go and sew that, and I'll be right back. Alright, so we're so close to being done. I just sewed again along the seam, leaving the armhole open, of course, sewing across the top on both sides, and then sewing down this seam. Just a simple straight stitch. And then the last part of what we need to do is hem the sleeves and then hem the bottom. And to do that, I'm just going to flip this in so that it's about a 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to iron it, and then I'm going to flip it again and iron it again, And then we're just going to pin this sleeve in place. All right, we're going to do the same thing on the back. I'm going to fold it like this. I'm going to pin it in place and pin it in place. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. And for the bottom, we're going to do something really similar. I'm going to start in the corner, and you're just going to go, you're going to take your iron and you're going to put it up evenly. This is about a 1/2 inch, and you're going to iron it. And then you're going to do the same thing again and flip it up like so. You're going to iron it in place. Pretend like I've ironed it. You're going to pin it. Pin it. You get the idea, right? So this will all be ironed. We're going to pin it in place. And you're going to do the same thing all the way around. And then we're just going to sew this in place. So I just wanted to show you this one more time before I go upstairs to sew. I have this rolled and ironed and pinned into place all along the hem. This is the front, all along the back. And then these sleeves are rolled and ironed and pinned into place too. So again, I'm just going to go upstairs and I'm going to sew right along this line and right along this line to finish it off. I'm back, and I finished my hem at the bottom, and I finished hemming my sleeves, and this is the final product. You can see how that asymmetrical hem turned out in the back. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something. And if you make something from this tutorial, I would really, really love to see it. So you can find me on Instagram at WeMadeItHome. You can find me at WeMadeItHome.com, and you can email me at hello@haleyherman.com. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this.